Hey guys, my name is Mr. Anderson and I am mean to people on the internet. I try and be polite about it though. I just tend to ask tough questions and insist on the answers and try to get to the bottom of things. I do a lot of stuff to do with debate. I'm a lawyer, so it kind of makes sense that this is the sort of thing I gravitate to. And on my channel, you'll find a lot of stuff about how to adapt a lot of the techniques that we use as lawyers for your own debates, so that you can be more effective when you're talking to people with whom you disagree, especially when those people are kind of trying to deliberately dodge the truth. Um, Now, I mean, I'm a lawyer. Obviously, I gravitated towards that because I like arguing and I like uh, debating. But a lot of people think that it is useless garbage. Um, and one such person is a very well respected scientist and YouTuber by the name of Angela Collier. With whom or for whom I want to be clear, I have a great deal of respect. But I do disagree with her with respect to the futility of debating with people. And I want to try and make a case that everything that I do, my entire existence, does have some utility. So hopefully I'll be able to convince you of that, and maybe Angela will even see this video and I will be able to convince her of that. But before we get into that side of things, let's see what Angela has to say on the subject.
Okay, what I would like to do now is make a distinction between what you just saw, which I would call scientific debate, and what people talk about colloquially when they say, I'd love to see you debate that guy, which I would call debate spectacle. I've been thinking about this recently because I sometimes get comments and emails from, I'm assuming, well-meaning people who are like, I heard this random wackadoo talk about how the earth is flat on a podcast, you should debate him. And that's not what scientific debate is. Why would anyone ever do that?
I think this is the first and greatest disconnect that Angela has between sort of, what she likes to do for fun and what other people like to do for fun, is that she does not think that conflict is fun. And I get that. I'm married to somebody who doesn't think that conflict is fun and doesn't understand why it is that anybody would willingly subject themselves to that. And it might seem very strange, but just understand that there are people out there who like to test themselves and who like the thrill of competition. And that's, even if you're not into sports, I'm sure that you can understand that people sometimes like sports. Even if you're not into, boxing, I'm sure that you can understand that some people like boxing. Some people like boxing with words. They like the intellectual challenge associated with trying to express themselves clearly and trying to understand the other person and trying to find the parts of their argument that don't work, and analyzing it and using their minds and kind of playing chess with words. People like that, and it's okay that people like that, and it's also okay that there's lots of people who don't like that. But in terms of why would people subject themselves to this, it's because there are different kinds of people, and different kinds of people can find some kind of weird, at least weird to you, things fun. That's why.
Scientific debate, as you just saw, is a group of people attacking a problem. They are not attacking each other. I mean, sometimes they do in the papers, but the global picture is that they are attacking the scientific question, and they're arguing amongst themselves. That's the debate. They're publishing papers. They're having communication. They're going to conferences. They're giving talks to each other. They're doing experiments, all working toward the common goal of solving a problem. The goal of the scientific debate is not to win the debate. The goal is to get the right answer.
I think this is a really good point by Angela, and it's another point where I think there is a disconnect between what the goal is of debate spectacle, as she calls it. I'm just going to use her terms. the goal between a scientific debate and a debate spectacle, because the goal in a scientific debate and a debate spectacle, those goals are different. And the goal in a debate spectacle is not to get the right answer. The goal is to communicate what you believe the right answer to be, and to show to other people, in particular the people who are in the audience, that there is a right answer, and to get them to understand that right answer. See, the goal in a spectacle debate is the spectacle. It is not about working out who wins the debate, like, between the two parties. Like, and generally speaking, right, like, very often the two parties are not going to agree on who won the debate. The goal is about communication. The goal is about education. Like, so, from a scientific perspective, when there's a science debate going on, what's going on is two people engaging in science communication with an adversary. And they're not really communicating with each other, although that's an important part of it. They're communicating with the audience. And this is one way, what I'm sure you think is a very weird way, to help people to learn. That's what's going on. We are not solving a problem. The problem darn well better be solved before anybody steps on stage. We are talking about communicating competing solutions to that problem.
This debate happened over 40 years. It's not just two dudes standing at podiums screaming at each other for an hour. That is not a scientific debate. The winner of a scientific debate is the theory that works. Whereas in a spectacle debate, the winner is the person who's better at yelling at the other person.
I can very much appreciate that it seems that way. And especially because sometimes people do yell at each other and emotions get hot. But I mean, at the higher levels of this, you're not talking to the other person ultimately, even though, like, you are, right? But the person who's there are multiple, like, winners and losers in a spectacle debate, because that debate is happening not on the stage, but in the minds of every single person who's watching it. And that's the person who's the judge, who's going to be deciding who wins or loses. And so it's the successful communication which occurs that is the win in that debate. Once again, I'm sorry for belaboring this point, but it's really different. This is science communication. This is not fundamentally a gladiatory contest, although it is portrayed that way and it does feel that way. And understand that is because that is the fun part. Some people find fun. They find it fun to do, and they find it fun to watch. And that's what allows you to sneak the science in and allow people to learn about stuff. And this is a way that people learn. That's why.
That has nothing to do with the scientific method. That has nothing to do with science. I don't think we should associate those two things. I feel like there is a population of people who view spectacle debate as like the highest form of gentlemanly communication. Oh, wow, it's so beautiful to see people at odds have such a pleasant conversation, which is so weird. You go see the debate, it's not two gentlemen just like delicately crafting arguments and then politely listening to another point and then just recrafting their statements in a lovely conversation. It's a spectacle, a performance where people yell at each other and the person who's better at yelling wins. And that, to me, is useless garbage. Like, right in the trash. Like, what is that for? What would that ever do?
Dad? Go away!
Public spectacle debates say nothing about the subject matter. There's an example. There's the 1860 evolution debate, which I'm not going to go into, but there's like a Christian guy and an evolutionary scientist. The Christian guy is like, oh, did your mom come from a monkey or did your dad? And the crowd's like, oh. And then the scientist guy is like, you're a loser and that's a stupid thing to say. And the crowd's like, oh my God. And the evolution guy won, right? But that debate did nothing for science. That was a spectacle. Like, people fainted, people screamed, people were shocked that the guy thought he had a good burn with like, oh, I bet you came from a monkey. That was 1860. And people still say that, like, oh, you think I'm from a monkey? It's like, I can't believe we haven't moved past that yet. But that debate, obviously, because people are still saying that, did absolutely nothing.
Well, I think that's wrong. And the reason that I would say that that's wrong is the same reason that you say that it did absolutely nothing. And that is because people are still using those lines in their own arguments. Because another reason why this sort of thing is valuable is that it teaches people the arguments, and it also, it encapsulates them, and you're handing these people little nuggets so that when they have these important discussions with other people back home, where they disagree, when I'm sure want evolution to propagate and for people to teach it to each other. And when somebody who believes in evolution runs up against resistance, they may not know what to say. And if they've watched you debate and you do know what to say and you know how to eloquently put the arguments forward and you know how to, say those things, which, you can call them sick burns or you can just call them good arguments or good ways of expressing the idea, then they can take those and they can use them and you can help science to spread and flourish, which is the goal. And the thing is, in this case, we've got, oh, you think you came from a monkey. Like, look, that's a really good, I don't agree with it. It's not true, but it's effective in communicating an idea. And the reason that it's still around and still being used by people is that the people on that side who agreed with that got that nugget from that guy, and they're still using it today. It is having an effect. And I know you don't like that effect, but you can't deny its effect, that the effect exists.
That debate was not about evolution. That debate was two people trying to own each other in public. And that time the scientist won. But what a waste of time.
That's kind of another thing, right? Is that I want there to be scientists at the table when people are talking about whether or not X idea or Y idea is a good idea. Because I want there to be pushback. I want there to be people who understand the science saying, no, this crazy thing that you say isn't correct because it, doesn't make sense. The math that you're proposing doesn't make sense. And having somebody in the room to push back, yeah, it's not going to advance science, but what what it's going to advance potentially is people's trust in science, people's respect for science, and people's disrespect for pseudoscience and for silly ideas. And so having people in the room who can push back on silly ideas is important so that those silly ideas don't spread. And so that, can you imagine if we had a person, like the Speaker of the House of Representatives was a young Earth creationist? You don't have to imagine that, because the Speaker of the House is a young Earth creationist. That's bad. And maybe if there had been a person in a particular room at a particular time, that idea wouldn't have spread. So it is important in that regard, I think.
It did nothing for science. Scientific debate happens in the literature. Spectacle debate happens in public and is useless garbage. When I think about debate and someone who's I'm super into debate, I love debate, it's just a red flag.
That's a fair comment. Yeah, you're making a good point there. I have nothing to say to that.
Because I grew up, middle school for me was a teacher being I'm going to teach you guys how to debate. Let's talk about gay marriage. On the one hand, you have a guy who's gay marriage should be legal. Why is it not legal? It's 2006, so it should just be marriage. What even is gay marriage? And on the other hand, you have a guy who's this will bring the end times. Gay people will marry their horses. And the teacher, with full straight face, being here are the two sides. I'm going to randomly assign you a side because they're equal, and you should debate them. And
Well, that should not have happened. If that's your experience with debate, that gives us some insight into why you don't like it, because, like, holy mackerel, like, no, you do not assign middle schoolers an unequal debate and pretend that those two sides are the same. That's a horrible idea. So, and that is not a good representation of, like, that's not, number one, that is not how you start a bunch of kids off in debate. And number two, like, what I'm advocating is that you would have somebody who is, like, a professional, very, very good at debate, coming in on the side of right in that situation, and training people to do that is a good idea. Throwing little kids to the wolves in that situation is a bad idea.
to me, that's a farce. That's a scam. Like, these two things are not equal. What a stupid thing to do. What a waste of time. Why would you ever debate with someone who thinks gay marriage will lead to people marrying a horse? Like, that doesn't make any sense. Why is there this idea that spectacle debate is the highest form of discourse when it's obviously such a scam?
I don't know.
I don't understand. In 2019, I was in an airport bar having a drink and talking to a woman who was a complete stranger to me. And it was like 3 a.m. So we were having a very serious conversation where we were lamenting the seemingly inevitable march toward the loss of the human rights of women in America. And we were talking about how it just seems to be trending that soon abortion will be gone, and we were right. Soon we won't be allowed to get divorced, and in some states they want to make that right. And we were just, it was really somber, it was really serious, and the bartender sidles up with a smile on his face, and he was like, well, let me play devil's advocate. Let me just play the devil's advocate. And it's like, why?
Because that guy is an asshole, and he was trying to be provocative. And he knew that you felt seriously about that issue, and he knew that he had the power, and he was trying to flex on you, and he was trying to pretend that it was okay under the auspices or the guise of debate. But that doesn't mean that all debate is bad. That means that that guy was an asshole, and he is probably still an asshole.
What do you think? Like, we're having a normal conversation, and you want to devil's advocate my rights? You want to devil's advocate whether I'm allowed to be a person? And you think you're being a gentleman doing discourse? Like, oh, a debate, what a friendly thing to talk about. Two equal points of view, one where I get to be a human and one where I don't. And the thing about these devil's advocate guys is that they're always like, well, I just like to play devil's advocate. I think that's interesting and fun. It's a game to me.
Sure. And you know what? In a situation where you've got the consent of both sides and somebody needs to be the heel, and you want to explore arguments and you want to refine the arguments for, you're going to need somebody to fight against. You're going to need, and in that kind of a situation, a devil's advocate is fine. In this kind of a situation, the guy's being a jerk, and he's making a pretty flimsy excuse. And I'm not excusing his behavior, and I'm not suggesting that that sort of thing is okay. It's not.
Fact that you don't have rights is a game to me. I think it's fun. And no, I just don't think so. I don't think you can debate human rights and then pretend that you were just arguing the other side for fun. Saying that you're the devil's advocate does not absolve you of the heinous shit you just said. You're not the devil's advocate. You're just the devil. I read this really...
Well said, Angela. Well said. I agree with you.
Really great article from this website that is now shut down and I didn't know existed, but it seems really great and I wish I'd supported it when it existed, called I Won't Debate You and Here's Why, and I will link it below. I actually read a bunch of stuff for this video. I'll link it all below. But if you read one thing, read this. And I just want to read two things really quick. The oppressive status quo isn't static, and debate is an unwieldy tool to try to use to keep up with it. Debate requires a for and an against, which means that it legitimizes both sides as being inherently worth discussing. Then she says, I know that a lot of us are steeped in the idea of debate as intrinsically valuable. However, especially in an era where debate debate has become a dog whistle for subtly demonstrating a belief in hierarchies of humanity, I am opting out today and forever.
So I think this is a really good point is very strong, and so that's why I don't like it, and so you're just wrong. Oh, you're still here. Okay, well, I guess I have to deal with it then. So, look, you're making a good point, and that's the fact that, as I said before, debate is a tool of communication. And so sometimes there are ideas that are not deserving of that communication, and there are sometimes when one side benefits more from the communication existing than the other side, and that means that you have to be judicious about when you use debate, because it is a double-edged sword. Because whenever you are trying to communicate your ideas, the other side also gets to communicate their ideas, and sometimes they benefit more from the communication of their ideas than you do from yours, because their ideas are fringe ideas that nobody else was ever going to hear. And so, it would have been better for neither of those communications to have occurred. And in those situations, you are, unfortunately for me, right. That debate should not have happened. That spectacle should not have occurred, because it did not benefit the ideas that you wanted to communicate. So sometimes you shouldn't debate, and sometimes you should, and you should know how.
And I know human rights and everything is way more serious than debating whether an atom exists or not. I get that, and I agree with that. But I think this rule still applies. Why would I ever debate a flat earther? The only thing that would come from that is me elevating their position to worthy of debate, and it's just not. People envision themselves crushing their opponent and just, I'm gonna own this flat earther with facts and logic. And the thing is, the flat earther does not have facts or logic. That is not what they're in this for. They are a grifter. They want you to debate them to elevate their position to being worthy of debate so that they can scam more people out of their money. You cannot argue logic with someone who is not going to play by those rules, because they're just trying to devil's advocate you. They're just trying to get a funny clip where they're making fun of you. And they will win the debate because they are better at yelling at me than I am at receiving someone yelling at me, because I would just cry.
So, like I was saying before, there are certain debates that need to be had, and there are certain people that need to be in certain rooms to push back against certain ideas. But that doesn't mean that everybody needs to debate all the time. And that doesn't mean that you, Angela, need to debate anybody, especially if that's not something that you enjoy and it's not something that you feel like you're particularly good at, because there are lots of other things that you are particularly good at. I have watched some of your videos where you do math and I just kind of go cross-eyed. So, there are different people who have different skill sets, and that is okay. And just as importantly, there are different people who have different prominences, and that is okay. So, if somebody like me goes into a flat earther room and doesn't do as well as they expected to, then there's no real skin off anybody's nose, and it's not going to make the flat earther, better and, a grift a whole bunch more money, right? Whereas if you did it and you did exactly the same performance as I did, and they, mopped the floor with you just like they did with me, then they would be, touting the fact that you're a major YouTube star. And so, that would give them bragging rights, right? And so picking the right person to have those fights, is also important, because you don't want to sacrifice your queen for a pawn. So, I don't think you're wrong in saying that you're not going to debate, but there should be people out there who do. And I guess that's all I'm trying to convince you of.
There's this quote from John Paul Sartre where he's talking about debating anti-Semites. They know that their remarks are frivolous, open to challenge, but they are amusing themselves, for it is their adversary who is obliged to use words responsibly, since he believes in words. They delight in acting in bad faith, since they seek not to persuade by sound argument, but to intimidate and disconcert. If you press them too closely, they abruptly fall silent, loftily indicating by some phrase that the time for argument is past. And of course, that's also about a much more serious topic. However, it applies 100% to these people who want to debate scientists because they don't. They don't know science. If they knew science, they could just participate in actual science debate. They want to participate in spectacle. They want people to give them money while they grift and write books about flat Earth or whatever consciousness, quantum they come up with. It has nothing to do with science. It is not scientific debate. And if you are a scientist who agrees to debate them, you are just falling into their trap. Let's talk about Bill Nye. So in 2014, Bill Nye, very famous, probably the most famous science communicator right now, a man I deeply respect, and I'm so sorry for what I'm about to say about him, had a debate at the Creation Museum in Kentucky with Ken Ham, notorious religious grifter. And the topic of the debate was, is creation a viable method of origins? Basically, evolution versus creationism. In 2014, Bill Nye, no.
Yeah, and you're right here. Bill Nye was too prominent. The idea was too fringe, and the creationists got way more out of it. Even though they lost the debate, they won overall because the boost that they got to their ideas being communicated, even though they were much poorer communications, they still existed, and they were put alongside the prominence of Bill Nye, and so they benefited far more. And so, as much as I love Bill Nye, and I do, I agree with you that was probably a mistake in that situation. But again, this is circumstantial. It had to do with the prominence of Bill Nye and the silliness of creationism. That's why it was bad in that situation.
So what happened is, of course, Bill Nye lost this debate, because a debate is not how good you are at science. A debate is how good you are at overtaking a crowd. And the crowd in Petersburg, Kentucky at the Creation Museum was a bunch of creationists.
I mean, in fairness to Bill Nye is an excellent science communicator, and I think Bill Nye did an excellent job at communicating the science in that room. And whether or not the people who were in that room, were more on Ken Ham's side or more on Bill Nye's side, I mean, the thing was broadcast all over, and I have a feeling that probably a lot more people got a lot more out of it and, benefited from Bill Nye's ideas, probably in terms of number, a lot more than the creationists did. The problem is that it also spread these creationist ideas, again, over the airwaves, and that was a net bad.
That's the thing. People who participate in debate spectacles are bad faith actors. Because Bill Nye says he was open to hearing what Ken Ham had to say, but Ken Ham is not a scientist. He would never approach it in a scientific way. Bill Nye was never going to change his mind. Ken Ham, however, was also a bad faith actor.
So this specifically here is where I'm going to try and justify my existence, because as a lawyer, what I'm used to dealing with specifically is speaking to bad faith actors, speaking to people who are not trying to understand, who are not looking for the truth, who are ideologues, and who are not going to change their positions. And so my specific skill set, as anybody on my channel knows, is in terms of breaking down those people and forcing them to admit what we all know to be true. And that is a very different skill set than science communication, and it is one which I think is very important and needs to be added to the toolkits of science communicators, and that's the goal of my channel. So if you want to learn more about how to do that, you come to the right place.
He was not there to listen to what Bill Nye had to say. He was just there to be like, well, the Bible says, and also I want to raise $400,000 that I'm just going to pocket tax-free, which is exactly what he did. Bill Nye brought evidence, Ken Ham brought Bible passages, and Bill Nye lost because spectacle debates have nothing to do with the actual context of the debate. It's how well you can win over the audience, who also, by the way, are bad faith actors, because no one goes to a debate on evolution versus creationism without deciding already in the car who they're voting for. No one goes to a debate on evolution and changes their mind. All Bill Nye did was do free publicity for Ken Ham to accept a bunch of tax-free donations to build an ark, and definitely not private jets for whatever this guy does in his spare time. He also wrote a book about this event, which made him money, which I mean, no one enters a spectacle debate as a good faith actor. No one went into that thinking they would change anyone's mind. I think Bill Nye didn't realize how badly it would go for him and how much money he helped raise for nonsense causes. I'm sure he feels bad about that. I don't know. He also wrote a book, so he also made money on it, because that's what those are for. Spectacle debates have nothing to do with debate. They have nothing to do with the topic. It's just to make money, to raise awareness, to free advertise yourself.
Yeah, and importantly, to advertise the idea. And that is the point. That is what you are doing.
Which is why it's a scam and a waste of time. There's a quote on the Wikipedia page about this event from Debbie Goddard, the Center for Inquiries. Wait, is that the one from Lawrence Krauss's? If we don't let creationist ideas see the light of day, we can't develop the tools to address them, and we don't just need the tools of facts and evidence, but also of understanding their views and compassion for them if we want to be effective at changing their minds.
Look, I'm not saying that we should go and take every creationist and put them on television and try and, bring them to our communities so that they can try and convince us. I'm saying that we should be going into their communities so that they can be exposed to our ideas so that maybe you can convince some of them. That does have value.
And I think this is a very 2014 way of thinking, and I don't think it's correct. We all lived through 2016. There is no value in scientists participating in spectacle debates. Of course, scientists have a duty to communicate science to the public. Of course, scientists have a duty to talk to policymakers and tell them factual information. By debating, in air quotes, debating nonsense, the only thing you do is highlight nonsense. The only thing you do is present it as if it's a debate.
Look, if that nonsense is never going to see the light of day, that's one thing. When it is, when it starts becoming a problem, that's another. And unfortunately, and you have opined on this as well, string theorists have lied to us, and now science communication is hard, and now there is a trust problem associated with science, and scientists need to be going out and defending their ideas and helping people to understand them and helping people to test those ideas, at least intellectually, so that they can regain and rebuild trust in science. And sometimes you're going to have to do that from the bottom up, and that means that you're going to have respected scientific ideas, at least the ideas, if not prominent scientists. I'm with you on that, but at least those ideas, and some scientists are going to need to go out and they're going to need to defend them so that we can build that trust and educate those masses, because some people like to learn in this weird way.
Professional physicists absolutely must get involved in civics and act as citizen scientists. But the way to do that is not to promote random uneducated grifters and make it seem as if those two sides are the same. Creationism and evolution are not on the same playing field in science because only one of them is a scientific theory. You can't even debate the two. They're not even apples and oranges. It doesn't make any sense. I don't think this is a good idea, Bill Nye.
So that may be, and I think it probably was true for Bill Nye, but I'd like you to check out another very respectable female scientist by the name of, she goes, I don't know her real name, but she goes by Gutsick Gibbon on YouTube. And this is a person who has gone and taken creationism on from the perspective of biological anthropology and has done an amazing job at educating hundreds of thousands of people about the details of biological anthropology through the lens of examining and debunking creationism, because it's interesting to learn and it's an interesting tool and modality for learning about this stuff and for building that trust in science, to see somebody who is good at this, who is good at defending their ideas, test those ideas and win again and again, because there are people who are great not just at the science but at the communication and at the debate. And watching somebody who's great at this win and watching your ideas win makes you want to learn them more and does help them spread. It can be done.
This is why I would never debate someone. So you can stop asking me to in the comments. Well, it's not because I think I'm like a famous person and I would prop them up and make them get a bunch of money. No, I'm not a famous person.
No, yeah, you are. You're a big deal. You know, you are.
I'm actually nobody, which is why I don't understand why people want to debate me. Like, if you beat me at a debate, no one would ever know about it. I'm a nobody. No one cares about me. But they could use my PhD, which is something I worked very hard to get. And I did a lot of research, and it took me a lot of effort to be like, okay, I'm a scientist. And if I was to debase myself and debate some random wackadoo grifter, the only outcome of that would, of course, be that they would win because I would cry. And then they could put on their website that in 2025, they debated a PhD in physics and they won. And that only gives them clout to use to steal money from gullible people. And I don't ever want to do that. I see no value in that. I absolutely will not. However, I think you should start participating in actual, real scientific debates. And the way you can do that is by reading the literature. Debates happen in scientific, peer-reviewed publication journal articles.
I want to know something ironic? I have read more scientific journal articles as a result of engaging in debates with creationists than for any other reason in the last year, easily. Isn't that weird? Some people like reading scientific articles because of the debate, and I'm one of them.
You can read, well, the publication industry is a whole different video. Most of them are on the archive. You can read them. Go on Blue Sky. There's a little science tab. Follow the scientists. Watch them shit on each other. They do it a lot. It's really fun.
If somebody were to make that digestible for me so that I didn't have to comb through the scientific literature to watch two scientists fight about something, I would eat that up. I would watch that video. I would watch the hell out of that video.
Anybody can go to a physics conference. Yeah, it costs $1,200, but you know what? They actually do yell at each other. It's embarrassing for them. It's very cringy. Go to a physics conference.
You're not going to find me at a physics conference. I wish I could say that you're going to find me at a physics conference, but what you see is what you get.
You will see an old man yelling at some sophomore undergrad about how he's forgetting the very seminal work that he did in 1972 and how dare that kid that was born in 2005 do that to him. So it's a good time. Scientific debate takes 50 years. It happens in the literature. Spectacle debates are a 2-hour event where everyone involved is just grifting money. It's entertainment. It's a spectacle. It's a show. It's like WWE. It's not useful in any way to science, which is over here spending 50 years doing experiments and stuff. And the spectacle debate. It's never done anything good. Right in the trash.
Kyle, I said shut up!
You're a poop nose!
Let's stop pretending that this is the highest form of human discourse when two separate people that have opinions that are so far apart, go across the aisle and just, yell and scream at each other for 2 hours and say nonsense. That's garbage.
I prefer the term garbage.
I guess just to play devil's advocate, I'm sure there is a type of problem that debate is good for. I imagine at some kind of municipal meeting, is that the word? City council, they're like, where should we put the new elementary school? And one lady is like, by the middle school. That'll be easier for the buses. And then another guy is like, but that's right by the train. It's not safe for the little kids. Maybe we should put it by the new suburb. And that type of debate would be beneficial, would work to solve a problem.
Or maybe in the judicial system, or the way that we resolve almost every serious dispute in our society today. And also the way that we govern our society, not even just at the municipal level, but also at the state and federal and sometimes even international levels.
But as it is now, whenever you say debate to me, all I think about is garbage spectacle debates, which have no use and no utility in science. So let's end the spectacle debate. Everyone stop doing it. It's embarrassing. It's an obvious grift to just make money. It's embarrassing. Stop. But we should keep doing the real scientific debates. Those are great. You know, the kinds that take 40 years and have a bunch of publications and experiments and communication and people talking at conferences. And it's not people fighting to be right, but people fighting together against each other to get the right answer. That's amazing. That's great. End the spectacle debate. You know, long live the scientific debate.
I'd like to say long live both. I hope that even if you don't agree with the things I've said, that maybe it's given you some food for thought. And I saw in the comments that you're open to having a discussion about this stuff. And in the event that you are interested in having this discussion with me, I would be honored. But obviously, I'm more than happy to just have participated in this conversation in my own small way. So I think that's it for me, and Angela, sort of vicariously. So thanks, everyone. We'll see you next time.